Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here as an opportunity for giving voice to share some information, some knowledge, some inspiration, and some wonderful Q&A with people in the field that that have been leading the way for us. So today we are happy to be joined by Dr. Al Power, who is a board certified internist, geriatrician, and he is with the Schlegel U Waterloo Research Institute for Aging in Ontario, Canada. He's also a clinical associate professor of medicine at the University of Rochester, New York. He's a fellow of the American College of Physicians, and we are interested in his work as an author with two fantastic books, Dementia Beyond Disease and Dementia Beyond Drugs. But in addition, Al is a musician, a composer, a songwriter, so he is in great company with all of you who find joy through singing and community. He's performed at festivals, coffee houses, and even established a repertoire of songs that celebrate the aging experience. And these songs are performed all around the world. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Al Power.
Thank you, Eileen. It's good to see you and good to see so many people on the call this morning. What a great group.
Yes, we're so lucky. So to give you a little context, Dr. Power, we are convening people in our Giving Voice Learning Community Network, which is a group of people that are doing this type of work throughout the world. So either they're leading choirs, they're interested in how choral music benefits people with a dementia diagnosis and their care partners, and they're actively engaged in the work. Many of them actually sing with our choruses in the Twin Cities area as well as around the world. So myself, I'm Eileen Broughton. I'm the executive director of Giving Voice, and really hoping to take some time to talk about a lot of the concepts that you cover again in your fabulous books, but also your experience in this field. So I'd like to start talking about how music can play a part in the 7 domains of well-being, which is something that you talk about in your books. Kat's going to put those 7 domains in the chat so that all of the people that are participating have a little bit of background. But I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that and about how at Giving Voice, we're all about joy. So, you talk about these domains of well-being being so important for people living with dementia and really anyone. So could you tell us more about these domains of well-being and how joy is really at the top?
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Eileen. I'll give you a little bit of background. My first book, called Dementia Beyond Drugs, was written about 13 years ago. And the purpose of that was to challenge the use of certain psychiatric medications in people with dementia, including antipsychotic drugs, and to explain that people had deeper needs that weren't being met and that just medicating wasn't the answer. And I talked a lot about viewing dementia from a different lens and looking more not at just what's wrong with people, but what people can do and what their intact and emerging strengths are. And when it was time to write a second book, I was trying to figure out what I should write about. And in the first book, I mentioned the framework for well-being, which came about from members from a grant from the Eden Alternative. The Eden Alternative is a large organization dedicated to changing the experience of aging, both in nursing homes and everywhere where people live. And they commissioned a white paper to talk about what is it that everybody needs that isn't always being met when we care for people. And they came up with their framework, which they call the Eden Alternative Domains of Well-Being. And so what I did was I decided to use that framework to look at dementia through the lens of well-being, to say, how are these different aspects of well-being challenged, both by the disease itself, but also by the care environment for people? And how can we use some of our new vision to enhance those and to restore these aspects of well-being for people who live with the diagnosis of dementia? And so I don't know if Kat's put them up in the chat box yet, but the 7 domains I'll rattle off for you in the order I teach them are identity, connectedness, security, autonomy, meaning, growth, and joy. And I would argue that those are life-giving needs for all human beings. Whether you are old, whether you are young, no matter what country you live in, no matter what your ethnicity or your faith tradition, or whether you live with a diagnosis of anything or not, those things are important to all of us, and they continue to be important throughout our lives. And I think one of the problems with dementia is we're so focused on brain disease, and we're so focused on assisting people with those aspects that we forget about these 7 areas that are so important to living. And so the book really talks about why these are centrally important, and why a lot of people are being given medication really just have needs of well-being that are not being met, and how when you meet those, you often make people's lives a lot more better and fulfilled. So that's kind of the premise of the book, and it goes through all of them in detail. Now, I did put the well-being domains in a pyramid. It's a bit controversial. Not everyone likes my pyramid. And it's not to suggest that certain domains are more important than others, but I think that if you are supporting somebody who lives with a diagnosis of dementia and you want to restore different aspects of well-being, I think that there is a logical order. And so at the bottom of the pyramid, I put identity and connectedness, because you can't really help somebody restore their well-being if you don't know them, or if you don't have any kind of a close relationship with them. It's hard to give well-being to strangers or to people that don't know you, that aren't familiar with you. So that's why I put them at the bottom. On the next level, I have security and autonomy. Security is certainly about safety, but it's also about trust, familiarity, dignity, privacy. And once again, the relationship is very important to support that type of psychological and emotional security. Autonomy, just the idea that we have choice and control over our lives as much as possible. And once again, you need to know the person, you need to know how they view risk, and often you need to help them to balance risk with benefit in making decisions, because life is not risk-free. Then the next one is meaning and growth, because only when you can feel secure and make those choices can you do something truly purposeful. And then you can grow as a person, and people with dementia continue to grow throughout their lives. And then I put joy at the very top. And so why is joy at the top? Well, I think there are 2 kinds of joy. And I think too often we think of joy as those small moments. You know, someone tells a funny story, or we watch a funny television show. And you know, that those are happy moments, but they are not necessarily long lasting or sustaining. And we know that everybody has tough times in their lives, and certainly living with a diagnosis of dementia, you have many tough times as well. So I think there's a deeper kind of joy, and that's a deeper sense of fulfillment. And that comes really from strengthening the other aspects of well-being. So when you feel that your life is meaningful, when you have important relationships, when you feel secure, when you feel like people know who you are and appreciate you, then you really can experience that deeper sense of joy that sees you through the hard times as well as the good ones. And that's why I put it on top. I'm really not talking about, you know, a happy moment, but I'm talking about that deeper sense you could call fulfillment. There are many different ways you could substitute for the word joy, but that's how I viewed it when I put the pyramid together. So that's why it's on top, I guess.
Well, I think that we can all appreciate how joy really is absolutely fundamental. And, you know, in the work that we do, you know, the ability for us to connect with those areas of well-being, I mean, it's very meaningful. I think for many of us, we would say it's really the why behind what we do. And it's wonderful to hear that why, you know, does really give positive impacts in many ways. I'd like to just make one note about the way that you define dementia. And I want to give a little credit to a good friend of Giving Voice, which is Angela Lundy, who is with the Mayo Clinic Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, who years ago introduced us to your work. And she uses this definition in a very fundamental way. And it's that dementia is a shift in the way a person experiences the world around them. And I think that is, you know, particularly meaningful for us in the work that we do with singing and music, because we really see our programs as asset-based. And so it's our job to meet people where they are and allow them to participate fully in a choral community at the best of their ability. So can you talk a little bit about music and how that might fit in and how music plays such an important role in well-being for people with dementia?
Absolutely, Eileen, and thanks for using that, for quoting the definition. I'm really thankful that Angela has shared that with you. When I was first beginning to write my first book, and I was trying to explain why these drugs didn't work, and everybody was so immersed in the sort of biomedical disease-based approach to dementia that only sees deficits and decline. And I was raised that way too. I was trained that way, and I was trying to break outside it. And so the first thing I did in writing that book was saying, how can I see dementia differently? How can I define it in a way that's not just about brain cells dying, or not just about what's wrong with people, but just talks about what is the individual's unique experience? And that's where that definition came from. And I've evolved and changed my thinking a lot over the past 15 or so years, but that's the one thing that I haven't changed, because that really opened my eyes to seeing it from the standpoint of individual experience. And that also opens a lens to more of a disability mindset. If you see dementia as a cognitive disability, then you start to understand that people are differently able than they were before, and now they just need accommodations to continue to succeed. And so we need to work to people's strengths. Well, one of people's strengths is music. And one of the nice things biologically about music is it is not as strongly affected by most types of dementia as other areas such as language and memory and problem solving skills and some of those things. So even when people have a fair amount of disability from their dementia, they are still often able to engage extensively with music. And we all, have heard the stories of a person who maybe couldn't even name all their family members, but they could sit down at the piano and play something that they had played throughout their life because that part of the brain was working well. So partly it's well preserved, but the other thing about music is it is so extensively connected throughout the brain. It connects to memory in ways that just trying to recall things doesn't. So sometimes music will help you remember something that you just can't remember through conversation. It connects to emotions, so it can bring about, the positive and some of the poignant and sad emotions too. But it really opens up you to kind of bring your heart into things. It can help you to move better. We've seen, you may have seen videos of these amazing research being done, for example, with people with severe Parkinson's disease, who have such rigidity that they can barely walk and need someone to support them. And they turn on a tango. And as soon as the tango music starts, they start gracefully gliding across the floor with the therapist or the doctor who is with them. Because there's something about the music that gets by those rigidities and opens up the muscles to move more smoothly. So there are all these back doors, all these connections to parts of the brain that we don't fully understand, but that have nothing to do with the broken connections we see with most types of dementia. So from a biological standpoint, music is extremely important. From a well-being standpoint, you can just simply tick off those 7 domains that Kat put up in the chat box, and you can think about it. Identity has to do with who you are, what your likes are, what your favorite kinds of music are, what your favorite songs are, your personal history with music, what a song means to you. Maybe it was, your high school prom song, or maybe it was a song they played at your wedding or something like that. Connectedness, once again, it connects you to past, present, connects you to family, connects you to friends, connects you to your hobbies. Security, music can certainly help people feel safe, feel comfortable sometimes when they are feeling down or anxious. Music is extremely important for that. Autonomy, once again, music enables you to express creativity in your own way. There's no rules that you have to follow because creativity doesn't necessarily have rules. And that gets into meaning. When you can do things your own way, you can find meaning in what you do. You can share the music with others. People can sing to others. They can sing to children. They can teach a song to people. And people continue to grow by learning and enjoying not only singing, for example, as a chorus, but the social integration that happens with that, the learning of new materials, the deepening of relationships, and of course, we're all feeding into that deeper sense of joy too. So you can see that music is, there are lots of activities you can give people. You can give them puzzles to do, and you can, try some brain games and things like that. You can try bingo, but there are a few things that feed into all those aspects of well-being as well as music does. Other forms of art do too as well, but music is so universal for people because even if you don't sing or play an instrument, chances are you enjoy some sort of music in your life.
Well, that's it's wonderful to hear how music really touches all of those 7 domains. And I think, we seek to maximize that benefit with, music in the brain and the way in which our choruses, work weekly to inspire people. And so we use music to allow people to learn in all sorts of fun ways. And there's a lot that we do, obviously, with familiar music, so that when, as you mentioned, when singers participate with us, they can recall those emotional memories and that feeling. But can you talk a little bit about how there's an opportunity to learn and what that may look like, especially when we're really focused on those, that empowerment and allowing singers to be really focused on what they can do. So a little bit maybe about familiar and unfamiliar music and how that relationship may work.
Yeah, I think that both are important. I think familiar music, particularly music from long ago, is deeply embedded in the brain. And when you're living with a diagnosis of dementia, you can often call up those. And, I have a lot of experience performing music at the nursing homes where I've worked and other places like that. And often at those homes, you'll have a lot of people in the audience who are not only living with dementia, but maybe more severe levels of disability. And yet with those old songs, like for instance, on that CD you mentioned, I do a live recording with the group of doing Home on the Range. And there are people there with, once again, we do call fairly advanced conditions, who sing all the verses. The verses I had to look up because I didn't know them all, but people know them from deep in their past. But I also believe that, people with living with dementia learn new things all the time. They may learn them explicitly through teaching. They may learn them implicitly through just repeating over and over so they get embedded in the brain. It may be a little bit more challenging. It may take more repetition. They may learn things better than others, but we can learn. And so I never assume that somebody shouldn't try something new. And so whenever, and in my first book, I based on my experience, I put some rules for performing music for people in nursing homes, people with dementia, and one of them was to definitely play something old, but also to play something new. So you have an anchor to the past, you have something to get you involved, but you also have a chance to have some spontaneity and to learn something you've never learned before. And that's part of growth. That's part of experiencing new things every day and not just the same old, same old. And I remember there's one song that I did, kind of a funny song. Unfortunately, I didn't write it, but it's kind of followed me around, unfortunately. I heard it from somebody and nobody can figure out who wrote it because nobody will admit it. But it's a song about the 5 constipated men in the Bible. And it's this really series of horrible puns about these 5 people in the Old Testament. And so I started singing it and it followed me everywhere. So I recorded it. And it was funny because the first time I tried to record it live with a nursing home audience, people didn't sing along very well. It has a fairly simple chorus, but I just couldn't get a lot of participation. And so we went to do another concert and we were going to set up to record again to try to get it for the album. And my producer, Alan Whitney, who's also a musician, had a brilliant idea. He said, people start out a little bit shy. They've never heard it before. There's these microphones. They don't want to sing out. So start with something everybody knows to get them singing. And then when they're going, launch up into the other song. And so if you listen to the recording, you can hear it's actually 3 tracks. It's a track of everybody singing, "I've been working on the railroad." And then when they're all singing and clapping and having a good time and relaxed, and when you're relaxed, it's easier to find the words, it's easier to find the notes. When you're tense, those things go out of your head. So this kind of got people happy and relaxed and emotional in a positive way. And then the next track, I'm teaching them the song. And then the third track, we launch into it and I get great participation because people were prepared for it. So I think as a performer, you can sort of gauge how people are doing. And if you're doing some new things and people are having trouble connecting to them or having trouble learning them, then it may be time to switch gears a little bit. And I think, whether your audience is people that live with any medical condition or not, you're always trying to gauge how people respond to what you're doing. And you're always kind of changing up what you do based on the best way to connect with people and get them involved.
I love that. I love how you said that, the familiar music is the anchor, and then introducing new music is a way to, promote growth and to get people to try something new. I love that. Well, and there were a lot of little sort of things that you included in there about ways in which to engage people. So in thinking about the work that Giving Voice and the courses around the world do, we're really involved in process. And so our rehearsals are sort of our secret sauce to how we provide, a sense of community and really engage people through singing together. Do you have any sort of little practical tips or tricks that you would say, knowing what you know about how we create well-being for this population, that you could sort of give to this group to say, have you thought about this in creating your environment? Have you thought about that in creating your environment? And especially with your experience being a musician, any tips or tricks you could share with this group?
I guess a few come to mind. When it comes to process, you all may know that better than I do because you have worked with your groups, you have figured out what works and what doesn't. So I may find if I brought a bunch of songs to one of the choruses, that you might help me to teach them better than I could do by myself. But there's some things I know about engaging people. And the first thing, once again, is to create comfort and familiarity. So when people come in, there probably should be a little bit of time to get to know each other, to say hello, maybe a little bit of a ritual to start it, whether it be introducing yourselves or singing a familiar welcoming song everybody knows, or having somebody say what happened to them over the past week, something to just kind of get people together to remind each other who's around them and to kind of feel familiar in the space too. And in that way, I think it's important that the space be non-distracting as possible. I know a lot of people tell me when they live with a diagnosis of dementia that sounds that are not part of what they're trying to do are distracting. Sights can be distracting. So for example, if you're sitting in front of a big picture window with lots of traffic going back and forth outside that you're looking at, that can be distracting. If you've got an air conditioner that's humming really loudly, that can really bother people sometimes who are trying to focus on music. So anything you can do to create a comfortable and quiet and focused space, I think is really important. I think also, even though choruses, and maybe you can tell me how you do this, it just occurs to me that even though choruses, that I've been in, stand side by side in rows, maybe it's helpful to do more of a semicircle so that people actually have a little bit of vision of the people around them. I have found sometimes that when people are sitting next to people, because with some kinds of dementia, you tend to lose peripheral vision, that they're not even engaging because they're not really even aware that the people next to them are there. So sometimes just rearranging chairs so people are a little bit more in the line of sight helps improve engagement. So you might find that different setups might lead to better singing, or even having several semicircles, maybe a couple of soprano semicircles in a tenor. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there, but you might find the seating arrangements all sort of generally pointed toward a leader, but maybe helping people engage in small groups might be helpful as well. I'd be interested to hear if that works at all for you.
Those are fantastic. Well, I'm going to go back to your book for just a second. So in your book, Dementia Beyond Disease, one quote that really stuck out to us here was this: "We must challenge our own views, assumptions, and prejudices that serve to reduce people with dementia to the sum of their broken parts, while ignoring the rich offerings and potential inherent in their emotional, spiritual, and relation selves." Could you share a little bit more about that? So we just love how, again, asset-based, and how we have all of these outside influences that encourage us to, again, reduce people with a diagnosis down. And so how do we do a little bit better about embracing those rich offerings that you talk about?
Yeah, thanks. It's I think that what we do with dementia is, we have these standardized tests that we use to measure cognitive function, and they give a very sort of gross description of what people are or maybe are not able to do. And so we do things like, can you tell us what day it is today? Can you tell me who the president of the United States is? Can you tell me, can you spell the word world backwards? Can you subtract 7 from 100, and then subtract another 7, and things like that. And those tell us some things, but they don't really fully give us a picture of what people are able to do. And so I think we need to look deeper, and we need to remind ourselves that there are many other things that people with dementia are capable of doing. And I'm actually just, as I'm talking, I'm looking for a slide, because I made a couple slides recently for a talk that I may or may not be able to find. Yeah, here it is. Stephen Sabat is a researcher from Georgetown University who's done a lot of work in this area. And when he gave a webinar several years ago, I don't know if you've had him. If you haven't had him for your course, he'd be a wonderful person to bring in. He talks about, this is a list of things he says that even people with advanced dementia by medical standards can do. People can experience pride and maintain dignity, but they can also experience shame and embarrassment if those things are not well supported. People can feel concern for others around them. They can communicate their feelings, sometimes with assistance from a facilitator. People can maintain their self-esteem, and people can particularly maintain spiritual awareness. And my friend Christine Bryden in Australia, who's been living with dementia now for 28 years, if you can believe it, says that as she progresses with dementia, her sense of spirituality actually increases, because it's more about your interior self and exploring yourself deep inside. But there are many other things that people can do. They can learn information, as I mentioned. People can access memories and language, sometimes better with music, art, other stimuli, reading or singing to children, singing and playing music, creating art, teaching recipes. A study from Florida said that a lot of women that they studied that had fairly significant memory problems could still teach a recipe to others, as well as people that didn't have dementia. People can create stories, and sometimes storytelling is more effective than reminiscence. And the person that's famous with that, and another person who's a must-have if you haven't had her yet, and that's Ann Basting, who's a MacArthur Fellow who created Time Slips, which brings creativity, the arts, and storytelling and other engagements into supporting people with dementia. But people with dementia can also teach others what it's like to live with dementia, because I can't. I don't know what that feels like. My brain hasn't changed that way. They can give input into their own lives, into their own plans of care. They can advise on dementia education programs, pick speakers. They can give input into physical design and renovations for a building, for a nursing home, for their own house. They can lead and engage peer conversations, and there are many of those around the country. I have a friend in Scotland with Alzheimer's who goes into nursing homes and surveys them through the eyes of a person with dementia to tell people what's too noisy. Is the lighting good or bad? Is the carpeting a good pattern or a bad one? People can volunteer in their community. They can certainly participate in choruses. So just to give you an idea that there are many things, and there's no cognitive test for any of those things. And so when we do those tests and say, your Montreal score is this or whatever, we're ignoring all these things that people can do that are not captured by those tests. And so I think opening up a wider lens enables us to think of things like, why not have a chorus? If you just looked at people, can people remember these 3 words, or can people spell a word backwards? You might think, well, they can't sing, they can't do this. The cognitive tests really don't tell the answer. And I have a friend, Dr. Nader Shabahangi, a wonderful psychiatrist and operator of some assisted living homes in San Francisco. And I quoted him in the book, and he said that a lot of what we do in medicine is like looking for your car keys in a dark room, or in your house, only in the places where the light is on, and not bothering to look in the places where the light's not on. If the light only shines on what our cognitive tests show, then that's the only place where we look for abilities, and we don't see them everywhere else. So I just think that's a good metaphor for what we often do as short-sighted doctors.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we seek to illuminate those areas that maybe aren't getting some light shown on them. This is all really wonderful. I'm wondering if there are things that you in particular would like to share with this group as a musician. So as someone that engages in music as a personal love and a hobby, any sort of aha moments you've had, or stories. We embrace storytelling here. As you mentioned, storytelling is often an amazing way to really reach people. So any amazing stories you'd like to share?
I've had some amazing engagements with people particularly in my work in a nursing home who've had very advanced dementia, who maybe couldn't speak, couldn't remember things, who suddenly were freed up because of their exposure to music. And I talk about those a lot. If you have not seen the film Alive Inside, it's worth seeing, because that shows the power of personalized music, iPads with personalized playlists, in awakening the abilities of people who were thought to be unable to do things. And you can just go on YouTube and look for Alive Inside, and look for the 6-minute clip of Henry, who is awakened by listening to some of his favorite music, and then starts singing and imitating Cab Calloway and singing songs after he had not said anything coherent to people before the music was played. And so there's many examples of that. And once again, I think, the idea is about potential. It's to never sell anybody short, to never assume that people can't do things. There may be things we can't do, but until we try, we don't really know. The problem with the medical view of dementia is we tend to assume people are incapable, instead of assuming they're capable until they show us that they need assistance. And so once again, I would say try everything you can. Also, getting older, as an older person engaging with music, I'm a little bit less of a perfectionist than I used to be. And I think we get in trouble when we're too much of a perfectionist. I think we have to forgive ourselves. We have to say, maybe I'm not the best singer, maybe I'm not the best piano player, but music is not about perfection. Unfortunately, by relegating music so much to those top performers, the concert halls and the top singing albums and things, we kind of make it feel like, oh, the rest of us can't do that. We can't, we can't sing like Beyonce, and we can't, play the piano like a concert pianist, can't play the violin like Joshua Bell, something like that. So we might as well not do it. And the truth is that music is more than just performing in concert halls. It's really what feeds us. It's what creates community for each other. I'm bringing a friend to Rochester, Matt Watroba from Detroit, who's a folk singer, also a radio DJ. But one thing he specializes in is just leading communities in singing. So he'll show up and he'll just lead a sing around for a couple hours and engage people. And it's all about everybody can participate. And that's really from the great legacy of the late Pete Seeger, who believed that music should be a shared experience. Music was a vehicle for social change. It was not something for a performer to be kind of in an isolation up on a stage and nobody joining in. And maybe the best example of that, there's one of those tales about Pete Seeger traveling the world when he was at the height of his popularity. And as you know, Pete Seeger was sort of left-wing politics, and sometimes the right-wing governments didn't like his message. And he was once asked to perform in Spain when Generalissimo Franco, the right-wing dictator, was still the head of Spain. And they knew he was coming, and he was on stage in a field full of thousands of people. And before he went on stage, they went through his set list and they kind of crossed off songs and said, "We do not want you to sing these songs." And so he was well known. His songs were well known. So what Pete did was he went out on stage and he said to those thousands of people, he said, "Well, the people backstage have told me that there are some songs that they don't want me to sing. So I can't sing these songs, but maybe some of you know them. So how about if I just play the music and you can sing the songs?" And he played all his songs and these thousands of people sang his songs. And that's the power of community, the power of engaging people. None of them were up on stage, but they had the power to do something that he could not do. And that just kind of shows how music can be a powerful force in society beyond what we might expect.
Okay, well now we're all going to steal that story, because that's a fantastic example.
Oh yeah.
That, and it highlights the idea that music is a relationship, and the sense of community that you experience is so important, and that audience members and singers in our choruses demonstrate that beautiful relationship every time that we perform. So thank you.
I wrote a song many years ago, one of the first ones I wrote, just about singing and about sharing music. And the last line of the last verse is, "A song that sails the winds ain't worth nothing until it falls to rest upon our ears." And I think that's really important. The music up in the air doesn't mean anything. It's only when we hear it and experience it that it has any kind of meaning. It's just sound waves otherwise.
All right. Well, if you are ready, Dr. Power, we would like to move on to Q&A if that works.
Absolutely. Happy to.
All right.
I see a lot of
So
nice
we've got it.
comments. I haven't seen questions unless I missed them.
So
I did. There was some question about that song and that album about aging. It is on my website. My website, which was put up in the chat box, lpower.net, has two. You can toggle between two places. There's the medical place that has my books, and there's a musical place that has my music. And I made a CD called Life Worth Living, a celebration of elders and those who care for them. And that's the one that song comes from. And I have copies at home. So if people are interested in it, there's a place you can send away to get those things.
Perfect.
It's also on, by the way, all my albums are also up on all the streaming services. So if you have Apple Music or Spotify or Bandcamp or any of those, you can listen to these songs anytime, including the 5 Constipated Men, I'm afraid.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got a question about your experience working with music therapist.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about that, your experience working with music therapists?
Yeah. First of all, let me say I am not a music therapist, and it's an important distinction. And I think that music can be used in a couple of different ways. I remember I was helping with an opening of a groundbreaking for a new building at a home out in Michigan, and right before I came, somebody emailed me and said, "Well, Dr. Power, we hear you also do music therapy. Would you maybe do a session while you're here?" And I wrote back and I said, "I am not a music therapist. What I do is I like to sing music and share it with people, and I'm happy to do that." So music therapy has some absolute indications. It can sometimes be used as a therapeutic tool to help people to get by certain deficits, like trouble speaking, for example, word finding, those kinds of things. And music therapists can speak to that much better than I can. I'm working with a wonderful therapist at the University of Rochester who's doing a study to use music for people who are on ventilators in the intensive care unit to help decrease anxiety, to help them to wean faster from the ventilator, to get off their medications more quickly. So there are many, from hospitals to in your own house, there are many benefits of music therapy. So I interact with them. I don't present what I do as music therapy. What I like to do is I like to share music, but you can see that what I do also has a therapeutic equivalent. It's not just so trained and directed at trying to help with certain types of difficulties that people may experience. But there may be therapists, maybe the person who asked the question, who can talk a little bit more about some of the things that they can do with music therapy too.
Great, thank you for that. Next question would be, do you have any tips to teach our choirs new music?
Oh boy, well, once again, choir directors are probably much more skilled at this than I am. When I do a sing-along song, I try to teach the chorus. And so I will kind of do the standard thing. I will maybe tell what the song's about. I may talk through the words first if they're simple. I may sing them. I may have people sing them all at once if they're really simple. Or if it's like 5 Constipated Men, I have people do one line at a time. Because 5 Constipated Men it's not really hard, but to teach it, it's a call and response song. So I sing a line, people repeat the word, I sing it, they repeat the word. So I had to kind of do that piecemeal to help people get that. And so I had them do that, and I had them go through it a couple of times before we launched into the song. And then because the song is so bloody repetitious, you finally get it by the time it's over. And so other ones can be more difficult. And I know. I believe that the most choruses should be memorable. That's what they're there for. Sometimes people write choruses and they change the words each time a little bit because they want to develop a theme. And that's wonderful, but it doesn't help people sing along. So you have to decide what your song is for. If you want to write a song for singing along, the chorus should be fairly memorable. It should be fairly repeatable. So when it comes around again, you don't have to learn new words or a new melody. And some songs do that, some don't do it quite as well. But it's important to know when you're going in, which ones are the easiest ones to teach and which ones take a bit more practice, I would say. Sometimes I even do this stuff if I'm doing a line, to help people go up and down, whatever. You can use both visual and oral stimulation. So you can do both this. You can raise your chin for the high notes. I do a sing-along song where you hold a note. Maybe we'll do that one today, where you hold the note for 3 beats, And so sometimes I do that when I'm teaching the chorus, because you have to hold that one word out. So anything, sometimes the combination of visual and verbal makes a big difference for people.
That's really helpful. Okay, I have just a quick question about the power of language. You talk a lot in your book about how the language we use can enhance identity, where a lot of the language that's used out in the community kind of destroys that identity. So how we reinforce the way that we see our people with dementia. And so, so an example would be, you replace suffering from or a victim or with living with, and how that language can really impact not only the people that you're immediately with, but just, your community in general. Can you talk just a little bit about that importance?
Words are really powerful. They can both help set our mindset. They can reflect our mindset too. And so I think it's very important, particularly when we're trying to open people's minds about possibilities with dementia. And the words that we have used are very stigmatizing. They're very negative, labeling, judgmental words. And so it's very important that we start using more positive words. And that's a perfect example. I mean, everybody suffers from time to time. But when you say somebody suffers with dementia or somebody's a victim of dementia, it suggests that is the only path available to you if you have this diagnosis. And the truth is, people can live very fully. People can have a lot of joy, can have a lot of meaning in their lives. So that's why I like to say living with dementia or living with a diagnosis of dementia, a lot of people will say. I have a friend in Australia who calls people with dementia experts in the lived experience of dementia. So once again, they are the experts. You are the experts if you have the definition or the diagnosis, because I don't know what a changing brain feels like. Sometimes I get an idea, if I'm a little jet lagged and I'm having trouble finding words, I can say, oh, maybe this is what it's like, but it's not really the same thing. So those are some important words, good examples, and we really not only get after doctors and healthcare workers and the public, but also the media. The media can be the worst actors when it comes to using the wrong language. And it's really funny. This is a perfect example. There was a woman in Ontario, Canada, who was featured on the nighttime local news because she was advocating and teaching people what it was like to live with dementia. And the headline was, local woman wants to be known for more than just her diagnosis of dementia. And so they talked about this, and then they showed the clip of her being interviewed. And when they showed the clip of her being interviewed, the little caption underneath said, Brenda Hooman, dementia patient. And it was like, what was the news story about? And then you identify her by her disease, And so calling people patients, we're all patients when we go to the doctor, but we're people first. We're always people first. So and what do you call it when someone gets distressed? You call it a behavior problem, which is judgmental and suggests it's somehow the person's fault. Or do you say the person is distressed? Or do you say, that they have some unmet needs or something that shows some light into what's bothering the people? We experience a full range of emotions and we consider that normal. We get happy, we get sad, we get angry, we get anxious, we get frustrated. People with dementia aren't allowed to have those because it's some kind of a problem we have to fix. And I always thought that was not fair, that people are not allowed to have the same range of emotions that we all have. Not allowed to do the same things we do or to feel the same way we feel without being judged by it. And so really it's about opening people's minds and helping them to not be locked in a box that just sees what's wrong with people.
Wow, yeah. I mean, language does matter. And I think, in thinking about how we direct our choruses and how there is an opportunity to reinforce language that's asset-based and focused on really, enhancing the human spirit is so important. Okay, another question. How can we make an effective case to the health sector or health policy sector to incorporate music or choral singing as possible approaches that can qualify for reimbursement?
That's the $64,000 question. This all goes way back to 1965, when Medicare and Medicaid were put into law. And back then, Congress knew that we needed some kind of an insurance program for people who were older, who didn't have a job, who might end up in long-term care. And they had a chance to make this either a social program, like a welfare payment, or a medical program. And welfare was a dirty word for some people in Congress. So they decided to tie it to medical reimbursement. So what's happened is aging and care of older people has become medicalized. And the only thing that makes any money is when you do medical things to people. And unfortunately, even in nursing homes today, you still see that footprint very strongly. You know, if you give a medication, you can bill for that. If you do a nursing treatment, you can bill for that. When you sing with people, it's hard to bill for that because it's not valued. And I got to tell you, I've been working in the field of trying to transform long-term care for 25 years. I'm not sure how to change that except to advocate, do pilot studies with your local regulators to show outcomes so that you can show that something is worth funding. One thing that is available to nursing homes, and a lot of people don't really appreciate this or use this, and that is whenever nursing homes are penalized with fines for doing something that's not up to standard, that money is put into a fund called the Civil Monetary Penalty Fund, the CMP fund. And there are millions of dollars through the state and federal governments, mainly through CMS, available to nursing homes to launch pilot projects. And what people don't realize is they can apply for several $1,000s to start a chorus and get it fairly easily through CMS, through the Center for Medicaid Medicare Services. And so you should talk to your local regulators, your state regulators, or the Medicare representatives to find out how to apply for those CMP funds, because a lot of very innovative programs, some of the stuff Ann Basting has done has been supported by CMP funds. I've done a lot of education through that, but there's many things related to the arts, innovative practices that have also gotten funding. So if you're in long-term care and you're frustrated that the government won't pay you to do what you're doing, try those funds, because they may be a source of money that is available from the government that actually gives some weight to the arts.
If you were to recommend, if someone had, 30 seconds of someone's attention and they wanted to put some weight behind this work, do you have any, little tidbits that you would say, hey, hit them with A, B, and C? Because, I feel like this concept is very easy to understand, but sometimes really difficult to articulate in a short, meaningful way when you're talking about some of that medical approach. So wondering if you just have any tips about that little elevator speech.
Well, if I could give you a 5-second speech, and that can be a little more detailed if you want, I would say that what you're doing with Giving Voices Chorus is more effective for people with dementia than Aduhelm or any medication that is on the books for Alzheimer's or any other form of dementia, and anyone that's likely to be available in the foreseeable future. So, because it does more for cognition, it does more for emotion, it does more for engagement. The pills that are out there are very questionable, and I personally believe the last couple shouldn't have been approved at all because they're not worth the risk. But what you're doing has demonstrable, obvious, visible benefits, and it's something that can engage everybody, regardless of whether you consider yourself Pavarotti or not.
Fantastic. Well, that is wonderful to hear. And, I think that our hope is that, using all the wonderful things that you talk about in your books, and then also what you have out there in terms of your website, is helpful to invigorate and inspire this group to look at the work that we're doing as essential. Even if we're not hearing that from the medical community, and even if this is still looked at as, this innovative nice to have, that reminder that the work that we're all doing, it is really essential for well-being, and that you are valued, and it is very important. But we don't want to leave it without any opportunity to sing. So Dr. Pepper, how would you like me to orchestrate this?
Well, I don't know how we're going to orchestrate this. I hope it works. I know sometimes on Zoom meetings, things don't coordinate very well. There's a delay. So I don't know. I thought I could do 1 or 2 songs from that CD that we talked about. And I don't know if you have a hard stop at noon. If you do, the second one, you can just listen to on your own, or I can do a couple if you have time to run over a little bit. But one of them was written by a friend of mine, and one of them is a song I wrote they were both purpose-built for the album. There were a couple of topics I wanted to hit on the album that I wasn't hitting. And this one was written by a friend of mine, and the other one was one that I wrote that actually Peter, Paul, and Mary sang on tour for a while, a song about the domain of autonomy among the well-being domains. But this one, that one's not a sing-along. This one's a sing-along, so I thought I'd try it if you want. And I don't know how we try this, whether we open up the mics or have people sing on their own, but we can try it and see what happens. My friend Tom Taylor wrote this song, and I asked him to write it for my CD because I needed a song that explained a story about an older person as a role model, as a mentor to maybe a child or a young person. And I didn't have a good one. And a lot of the songs, I wrote a few, but a lot of them were from people I know or people I've met along the way that had songs about aging. I thought I would include. There's some serious ones, there's some silly ones. And Tom is one of the cleverest songwriters I know. And Tom, interestingly, is now living with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. And Tom doesn't write songs anymore, but once again, we get together once in a while, and he has a great repository of songs, and we sing lots of old songs, and he's very vigorous about that. But Tom is one of the cleverest people I know. And so he wrote this song where he took a real life episode that occurred when he was a child with his grandfather in his grandfather's workshop. And the song is called Grandpa Made the Wheel. And the chorus is pretty simple. The chorus is, Grandpa made the wheel, Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. And that my is the word you hold for 3 beats. So now the melody goes like this. It goes, Grandpa made the wheel, Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. So it's like that. So let's just try a little bit. Grandpa made the wheel twice. Grandpa made the wheel. Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. Okay, now let's try it all together. Grandpa made the wheel. Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. How are you doing with that? Do you need more practice, or is that close enough? Hands, chat, comments? Think we should try it? What do you think, Eileen? Eileen says, got it. Okay. Now the verses are kind of tongue twisters. I told you Tom was a clever writer. So don't worry, I'll do my best to handle those, and I'll just have you come in. The chorus happens 4 times, 4 verses, so it gives you lots of practice. So I'll start with the verse. Take the square wooden end of an old orange crate, pull out the nails, save them if they're straight, give a bit of a pencil, a little more life, whittle it a point with a pocket knife, draw a great big X with a ruler there, from corner to corner on the wooden square, and right in the center where the 2 lines touch, tap a nail part way, just so much. Chorus. Grandpa made the wheel. Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. Tie the end of a string to the nail in the middle. Tie the other end to the pencil so it'll just about reach to the edge of the wood. Check to be sure that the knots are good. Now swing that pencil like a carousel, marking a circle all around the nail. Perfect curve, not a flaw. Pull the nail, it's time to saw. Here we go. Grandpa made the wheel. Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. Lift the little jigsaw from a hook on the wall. Gotta get ready to rise and fall. See that the blade is sharp and tight. Saw along the circle, keep the line in sight. If sawdust hides the line from view, little apprentice knows what to do. Puff and puff, it's all okay. Grandchild blows the dust away. Grandpa made the wheel. Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. Now use sandpaper and the good wood files. Smooth off the edges, stand back and smile. Just one thing will finish it. Drill a hole through the center with a brace and bit. Put it on the wagon, put it on the cart. Hang it on the wall as a work of art. Think how proud and smart I feel. I helped Grandpa make the wheel. One last time. Grandpa made the wheel. Grandpa made the wheel. It was nearly magic. It was round and real. My grandpa made the wheel. Edison made the light bulb. Superman's made of steel. Einstein made us relatives. Grandpa made the wheel.
That was great. I know
Isn't
that
that cool?
it's always important to have a little bit of singing, and especially songs like that that can, make you smile and get stuck in your earworm for the rest of the day.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Well, we are just out of time, and I feel definitely invigorated by our conversation and appreciate your time with us, but also your work in this field. I'm just deeply grateful that you are advocating to see well-being as such an important part in a dementia journey. So thank you so much for that. And
it's a pleasure. And if you're searching for the song that Peter, Paul, and Mary did on the streaming, on that CD, it's a song called If You Don't Mind. And if you go on Apple or Spotify or one of those, or listen to the CD, that's the one they did. And it's a song about keeping choice and control in your life, even if you're old, even if you live with a condition like dementia, even if you live in a nursing home, being in charge. And I think it will speak to people here. So I encourage you to check that out as well.
well, thank you. We absolutely will. So
unfortunately, they never got around to recording it. So you have to listen to me.
Hey, I think that's great. We could do a weekly sing along. That would be fun.
Yeah, you bet.
So if anyone has questions for Giving Voice, absolutely feel free to reach out. We'll put this up for recording. It sounds like a lot of people really enjoyed the time with you, Dr. Power. So
it's a pleasure. It's great to be with you all.
Yeah, thanks again. And we will see you all with song. Remember that, as you start your week, you have the power to make not only other people's lives a little bit better, but your own, just by singing. So thank you all so much, and we will see you again soon.
Yes, thanks everybody. Take care now. Enjoy your weekend.